I teach at Mount Dabo High School, and I teach from farm to table in a pathway called sustainable hospitality. So
Oh,
I'm a culinary nutrition teacher, and Rose taught there. I tried to convince her to take over my class so I could expand out to the school district because I wanted to be everywhere.
which you did for a little
And I
bit.
did for a year. And at the end of the year, Rose said, "Mom, I am not a high school teacher." She never raised high school kids,
Yeah.
teenagers, and I've
Haven't been there yet.
been, it's way different, right? Than
God bless all of you.
So I absolutely love it, and I'm there for the passion. They're incredibly sensitive and wonderful, and all this COVID thing and the Black Lives Matter. 30% of my student population is African American, and I've been there for 10 years. And there isn't, and then 60% are Hispanic. There isn't a day or a week that goes by that somebody's father wasn't shot or their brother.
No.
And somebody incarcerated, and it's just business as usual with all these kids. And when my husband passed away in January, in November, one of my students who's African American, he's a junior, his father was shot and killed, a Black man in Concord. And he came to school and he was killed on Wednesday. The kid was in my class on Friday, and he said, "Is it okay if I just kind of stay in here?" And the teachers are going, "I don't know what's wrong with Octavia." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "My father was shot. He was shot and killed on Wednesday." And he was so tender. And this is what these kids have to live with. When I came back in January after my husband passed, he was the first person that came up to me and asked if he could give me a hug.
Oh, how nice.
Because he could relate. And these kids every day are afraid when they walk out in the street, these young Black boys, are they going to come home? And that's what their parents, and here it is in the Bay Area, in Concord, California. His father went down to the 7-Eleven and somebody just mistaked him for somebody else and shot him and killed him. And they never found who did it. I mean, and it's like they live with this all the time. So, I stayed working there because they're amazing, just amazing. Anyway.
And even in all of that going on with them, like this is still what she does. Even with them, it's like, I hear you, come in, let's nourish you, let's nurture you, let's feed you, let's get you well and healthy and strong. And like the message is still the same.
The message is the same, and that's what.
And they love that. It's
Yeah.
like so comforting. They come in and they just get into the garden, and they get into the food, and they get into feeling better. And it is really beautiful.
It's really beautiful, really beautiful. So,
all right, hang on one second. I'm just going to mute you guys just so that it can stay on the food and what she's doing in the group. But if you just always have the option to unmute yourself if you want to ask something.
You can ask me anytime you want to ask a question. That would be really awesome. So this is exactly what I do with the students at school. Even though we have a lot of trauma and stuff going on, the only thing we can do is share, eat well, and give them a solution. And I give them the tools. So with that, I just came from my garden that is amazing. And in the next, 3 to 6 weeks, it's going to be like, crazy. So I have zucchini, but I work with some of the greatest master gardeners that have helped me. We've got a 1/4 acre out my back door at Mount Dabo High School, and there's another acre over in Riverview and Bay Point. And that's where my kids come from, Bay Point and Pittsburgh, and then they bus them into Mount Dabo High School. So I work at both gardens. I go back and forth. Those are my kids. And so I saw these. I don't know if you guys can see these. These are called phantom zucchini. And maybe it was 6 or 8 years ago when I saw this in my garden on my zucchini plants, I said, "Oh my God, is there something wrong with my zucchini plant?" And they said, "No, these are phantom." It's like, the plant will produce something that just doesn't go. Get rid of them right away so they don't pull energy out of your plant. But it's not that there's anything wrong with the plant. They're called phantom, and they're never gonna, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with your plant. Get them out of the way. And they can be growing right next to a really wonderful zucchini. There's no disease in your plant. I also went into my garden, and this is the first plucking of my basil leaves. And you never, I don't know if you've had basil, there, it's really, you can grow it anywhere, you know, it doesn't need to be caged in. Animals won't eat it. Animals, squirrels and birds and stuff, they do not like the taste of herbs. In fact, if you want to keep rodents away from your house, plant herbs, rosemary, basil, oregano around your house, and it'll keep the animals from going in. They don't like the smell of it, and they don't eat it. And it's a deterrent. So don't plant anything against your house. You're going to be bringing rodents in. So with the basil plants, you go out and you just snip. I don't know if you can see this. I snipped all the tops, and then my plant is high like this, but it'll go like this if I just keep snipping it. If you see that it starts to have a shoot with seeds coming up, it starting to go to seed, get rid of that. But you want to just, I go out every few days and I just take off the tops. So I'm going to add this. I put this into on a caprese salad, or I actually chiffonade or just take the leaves off and put it right into my salad because I like the taste of fresh herbs. So I've also got some mint that I'm growing out in my garden. And you take the leaves and you pull down like this and take it right off the stem, and you have the leaves and mint and basil, and you go, oh, how can I put those all together? In your salad, it is so refreshing. So I also have some little fresh spinach that I just got out of my garden, and I just pull it off really, you know, when they're small, they're going to be tender, they're going to taste real good, and they will grow. Now I'll probably have spinach growing in my garden in Swiss chard until next December. It'll just keep growing. You might get a couple of, you know, ladybugs or little bugs that eat it. I don't care. They don't take, I mean, as long as you wash it off, I eat it anyway. I don't, but you can tell I don't throw anything away. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So those are the fresh herbs. And of course, rosemary. I have lots of fresh rosemary. And this is fresh. I don't put any water in here, and I let it just dry up, because now I might stick it in the pan and toast it up. But as it gets dry, it gets more intense in the flavor. So when you're using fresh herbs in a recipe, it's 1 tablespoon of fresh herbs is equivalent to a half a tablespoon of dried herbs. So that's the ratio. So if it's calling for dried herbs, double it if you're going to be putting in fresh. But I like it both ways. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be grilling. You can do this on your barbecue. You can do this in your house. And I've got this pan here that I put right on my stove, and it's got the line. So I'm going to do some on here. And for those of you that don't have a barbecue or don't, I just do a lot right in my frying pan. And again, I always use a release. And I put a little salt. And then I'm going to take and cut up. So the first thing I have here is my eggplant. So I'm going to cut steaks this way. Eggplant takes the longest to cook, so I'm going to start with the eggplant. And again, do you see how I hold this? I'm going to protect my thumb. I like to use a serrated knife. I hold it like this, and I go right through. I like the skin. Some people don't like to have the skin. All right. So when I lay out my eggplant, I'm just going to put a little bit of salt on this side. I'm going to get my pan nice and hot. Always have everything nice and hot. So I'm going to put this to the side, because if I put it on when it's cold, it's going to tend to stick. But if I put it on when it's really hot, it's going to sear it, and hopefully it won't stick. But we'll see how, and that's why we put some food release. On my zucchini, I'm going to do the same thing. I cut off almost nothing. I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to do little rounds. Stick those to the side. And then I'm going to grill up tomatoes. Now, tomato is a vegetable, but it's also a fruit too because of the seeds that are inside. I'm going to take out the little core. So you can just do it in 3 nice big pieces like this. Or you can do it right just in half, either way. So I'm going to feel for the heat. This is going real good. I want it to be nice and hot. Ooh, I can smell the olive oil there. I love the smell of olive oil. Now, eggplant takes a lot more oil. It kind of seeps it up. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll poach this off for like maybe 2 minutes. Just poach it so it's kind of tender. And then I'll dry it off, pat it off, and then I'll fry it up, and it goes real quick. It goes faster that way. So I'm gonna, you can hear that sizzle. So I'm going to put 2 in here. Okay, then I'm going to do the zucchini. Put that right on here. It's going to get wild in here in a minute for me. Because of working in a restaurant, I always do everything on high heat because I'm so into having that nice brown on the outside. If you're not getting a nice brown on your chicken or your steak or your vegetables, it's because your heat isn't high enough and your pan wasn't hot enough. You really want to be able to sear it. So I'm going to take my tomatoes and I'm going to we'll see how this goes. So what I'm looking for is a nice brown. Anything that's grown, all carbohydrates come from the ground, except for milk. And the reason why milk is a carbohydrate is because it has lactose. It has lactose in it. That's why it's considered a carbohydrate. But it's also a protein and it has fat. So it's a complete food. Anything that grows in the ground, you're going to be taking up the minerals from the ground, and then the sun, the energy from the sun, you put it together, and it makes a carbohydrate, meaning that's where is our best source of energy. So that's why we want to get a lot of carbohydrates. And people tend to think carbs are grains and bread and pasta, where anything that comes from the ground, and I tell the kids, if it comes from the ground, it's a carbohydrate. So in carbohydrates, there's a little bit of protein in these carbohydrates, all your anything that's grown in the ground, but it also has a little bit of sugar, which is natural. That's where we get our energy from. But it has all of your vitamins and minerals in there. And then it has water. Most of these veggies are 70 to 80% water. So if you're eating a lot of salads and veggies and things that are fresh, that's going to help hydrate you also. And if you're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, dried fruit, what do? They took out the water. If you're eating grains, they take out the water from that also, and then they break down the wall of all the carbohydrates. So I'm going to turn these over, and if you can see that now, it's got a nice brown on there. I give it just one more little shot because I want that glistening. Oh, look at that. Caramelizing is from the sugar in the vegetable. Oh my God. Have you ever, I do peaches on here. So fantastic. You just put them on here. You don't want to do them till they're tender. You want to just get that browning on it. And you want to keep the crispness. Then you chill your peaches and put them right into a salad. Oh my gosh. A peach salad. Some arugula. Beautiful. So this is happening in here. Let's see. And you can see this is the frying pan. It has a nice coating on it too. It's got that brown. So whether you're in a grill or in a frying pan, you can get the same result. Tastes the same. Okay, so. The longer you cook it, like if you're roasting vegetables in the oven, the longer it's in the oven, the more you're going to dehydrate it. So you may go, wow, I started off with, 8 ounces of veggies when I put it in the oven, and now it's only 4. What happened? The water, it's the water weight, just like us. So I like to do things seared really in a high heat oven. I like to get a little brown on it. Oh, look at this. I can show you. Is that gorgeous? Oh my God, so gorgeous. Okay, these veggies, as soon as I get the brown on here, so here's my tomato with the lines on it. I'm going to turn them over. Yes. Oh, Rose, you're going to love your lunch today. Okay, look at that. Everything is like, I'm going to pick it up and show you guys. So this is what was, can you see that? This was in the frying pan. And you can see the tomato and the eggplant and the zucchini. And this is on the grill. Everything is almost done. See the steam coming up? That's the water evaporating. And I am just going to cook this till it's tender. I can stick a fork in it and feel it tender, and then that's it. Again, the longer you cook, oh, this is like perfect. I don't know if you can see that, Rose? It just kind of, and you just test it with your fork. These veggies are all done. How quick was that? Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to let them just cool off for a second. And then I'm going to put a plate together. I'm going to chiffonade some basil. I'm going to put my veggies around. I'm going to put some basil on there, and then I'm going to put my fresh mozzarella. That would be a great lunch today. I'm going to use my spinach leaves, put them under the hot veggies, and they're going to wilt a little bit. So I'm going to weigh out. You want me to weigh? Oh, where's your polenta too? Oh, right here. Okay. About 15 years ago, when I lost my weight, almost 20 years ago, I came from a family where my dad drank a lot. So my dad, it was hard for me to even wrap my mind around it that possibly my father had an alcohol problem. Because he was my dad and he worked, and every time he would stop drinking, my father would start eating apple pie and cherry vanilla ice cream. So then he would gain weight, and he'd say, if I'm going to feel this miserable, I might as well drink. So I grew up seeing that. My dad and he was always trying to help me lose weight. I was always trying to help him stop drinking. And so I had my own issues with food. And so I heard Dr. Lustig, my husband is a pediatrician, and he said, this guy talks just like you about children and what we're doing with juice and fructose in the liver. And his philosophy is that sugar, fructose, like juice or sugar, regular sugar, or especially high fructose corn syrup, is processed through the liver like ethanol. It is a toxin. it hits your liver, and the liver does exactly to it what you do with alcohol. Because what do they make alcohol from? From fruit and grains, carbohydrates. That's how you make alcohol. And he said fatty liver syndrome and cirrhosis of the liver are the same disease. And it was like, wow. And he says, when you get that high from alcohol, it's because your liver, the toxin, the liver is sending out to your Krebs cycle. And like, I'm not a doctor, I'm like a chef. And I'm sitting in and I'm going to back up, I'm sitting in a pediatric education meeting with all these pediatricians at 7:30 in the morning. And my husband says, now make sure, Cindy, you don't say anything. Just listen. So there's like 40 pediatricians. It's at John Muir. Dr. Les is speaking. And he said, the hormones that get released from the liver to take care of your body sends that to your brain, put her to sleep or put him to sleep. And that's why you get kind of groggy or you forget, because it's your body's reaction to this toxin. Just like if you get poison ivy, your skin reacts and gets a rash to try to deal with this inflammation that's happening. Well, he said, basically that's what happens in your body. And I sat there and I couldn't help it. I said, Dr. Lustig, I said, you're sitting here telling all these doctors this, and on the counter, they're feeding the doctors breakfast, and it's juice and donuts and bagels. And he just looked at me and he said, here's the disconnect. And the doctors are like, whatever. And nobody's like really listening to him. So I said to him about, my own experience, because now my husband's like, oh my God, they're going to know that you're not a pediatrician. And he said, I said, I had a problem with food and obsession and all of these things from my childhood. And he said, I bet you were bottle fed. I said, yes, I was. My mother was only 16 years old. She wasn't breastfeeding. And he said, and the formula they used on you was, at the time, was Caro syrup and pet milk, which is corn syrup. And it was sweet, because they knew that babies needed what was in milk, mother's milk, is carbohydrates. Like I said, milk is a carbohydrate because it has sugar, it has fat, and it has protein. So that's what they concocted. And my mother made sure that the bottles were, there was not going to be any bacteria getting to her child. So everything was boiled, everything, they did everything sanitary. And he said, we shouldn't have worried about that. We should have worried about what happened, what was in the formula that they gave you. So I just think, wow. And he said to me, I said, well, my father drank, and, one of the things that freed me, he said, Cindy, this is not a moral issue. This is biochemistry. Addiction is biochemistry. You keep poisoning yourself day after day after day. He said, you came into the world and they stuck a drug in your mouth, and your body's been fighting it off ever since. And he says, the way to heal is to stop putting this into your body. I about fell on the ground and cried, because it wasn't a moral issue with my father. My father was poisoning himself every day. It wasn't a moral issue with me. I was poisoning myself in my liver, and my body was responding by feeling drugged, by feeling irritable. And he put out all of the feelings that come from poisoning yourself. And until our society, and that's why Dr. Lustig wrote the Fat Chance cookbook, the Fat Chance book, and then I became his chef. From that day, he writes in the book, he said, this crazy woman, she like jumped me and wouldn't let me go for like 2 hours. I just kept asking question after question because I wanted to know. And when he said it wasn't a moral issue, it was like, okay. Then he and I started the Wellness City Challenge, and it was like, we got to get out and we have to stop children. We've got to get how the school district feeds our children. And I started with the Acalanes School District. And what they said was, we don't have a problem with children with being obese here. Go somewhere where there's obese children. And then they said, and they laughed. I was at the board meeting and they laughed and they said, but do you think you could do something about binge drinking? Well, from what I just told you, my father going back and forth between eating and binge drinking, they're the same. So I'm going to put together this meal, and for Rose. So what I would do, you got that? You want me to grow that up? I'll do the veggie part. How much veggies do you want, Rose?
Well, I already have 4, so 6.
Okay, so I am going to put out some of this eggplant and then a few of these zucchini. So we're going with 6, right, Rose?
Yeah, because I already have
Okay.
4.
So she's got her other stuff going on. Oh my God. Do you want more zucchini or more eggplant?
Zucchini.
Zucchini. Okay, Rose is a zucchini person. So you see, because these are just a little al dente, so they didn't lose a lot because they didn't roast in the oven. And then I'm going to put a tomato. You got to have your tomato on there, guys, okay? Like this. I am at 6 ounces. And then I've got my mozzarella. And this is that wonderful buffalo mozzarella. Oh my God. Okay. And Rose takes 3 ounces of that. I'm making a mess here.
Cool.
Forgive me. Okay, so here we go.
Pile it on here.
Can you give me another plate? I'm going to put it on there because I want to. Okay. Got it. It's all weighed and measured. So I am going to do this
Yeah.
and this.
All right.
And put this tomato. Oh, almost lost your tomato. Sorry, Rose. So I'm going to put some fresh spinach underneath. I forgot to put the spinach that I'm wilting underneath. Please excuse me. And then I'm going to take my basil and I'm rolling it up. And this is called chiffonade. I'm going to do fresh basil like this. Now my spinach should have been on the bottom, but I think you're okay with this, right, Rose?
I'm okay, man.
I'm okay.
I love
As soon as I start talking about Dr. Lustig and the history, I get choked up. Having been in therapy forever, trying to figure out what happened so that I could stop. And when I stopped being in the problem and I became aware of what a solution was, I'm no longer a victim. I understand what happened for my father. I wish he were alive today. He died 25 years ago from alcoholism. I wish that he was here today so I could share that with him. But I have all these children and I have my children. And it isn't going to be a moral issue for my grandchildren. They are not the children of alcoholics and food addicts. What they are is the children of people that didn't understand what our food system did to us. Nobody is evil. Nobody meant to, my father did not mean to harm us because of his reaction to what it, just like if someone got cancer, and we can have a lot of compassion for people with cancer. So eat well, understand how to take care of yourself, breathe, be kind to each other, plant a garden, help a child,
Yeah.
you know, all of those wonderful things. And it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime. I'm so grateful that you're all here, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you. Here you go, bro.
Awesome. Nothing better than having someone make lunch for you.
Yay!
All right, you guys, we'll see you later. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye.